I think on the idea of being hurt by people, does it kind of hurt to be in this back and forth with Joe? Because I feel like you looked up to him, and he was like, it was like, this is just a comic book geeky analogy, Superman and Shazam. Like it was.
I'm not familiar enough with Shazam, but yeah, no, it does kind of suck because you got to think about it. When I went on that AMP show with him, I was doing so because I kind of needed to make a public statement at that point. I didn't have PR at the time, which I probably should have, but I felt like I needed to make a public statement. I was on the phone with multiple different high-profile hip-hop media types that morning who told me, do not go on a live stream platform with Joe Budden right now. Oh. And I said, nah, Joe's cool, man. It's going to be all right. It'll be cool. And then I get on the phone with him or on the AMP call with him, and he basically, like, you know, totally let me down in terms of like what I would expect from him as like a business person or like even somebody who
Why do you think he did that?
I thought we were close to being friends. I think that he was salty about the fact that I was perceived as having dominated him in the prior argument on the podcast. And I think that he resented the fact that I did a bit of a victory lap. So I think he saw it as a easy opportunity to try to get a W over me and marginalize me. And, you know, I think that he was also somebody who was probably kind of resentful of the fact that No Jumper was having so much success with having all these different hosts. And when some of them start leaving, that's good for his narrative because, you know, he tried and failed to put together multiple different podcast lineups and they didn't work out. And he paid out his sexual harassment settlement and everything, you know, but I think, yeah, it was a very self-serving move on his part. And you see more and more people on a regular basis now who take the content thing and who treat people as disposable objects that they can try to go viral off of. And, you know, I respect it to some degree, but me and him, I thought that we had more of a respect between each other. But then I kind of realized that I had hurt his fragile ego by whooping his ass in a debate 3-on-1.
How do you feel about Joe's curation of that breakup? Because I'm not even talking about them, but the way he curated it.
You mean the No Jumper breakup?
Yeah.
Well, at one point, he was supposed to sign AD.
Whoa. Wait, after the breakup?
Exclusive.
I finally got like
after that, yeah,
news-breaking moment in the industry.
I never mentioned it. People put me onto that move, but then
wait, after the breakup or like
yes,
before because that would have been interesting if it was before. But yeah,
I don't know if he went and checked the tape, watched some footage, and maybe realized that.
Oh, so you're saying he didn't sign him because there's like shortcomings?
If there were shortcomings with Ice and Ish, and Joe Budden was being real with himself, I think he might have watched the footage and done the science and realized like, oh, these other guys who are being heralded as the next top content creators might be more of the same with some of the other hosts. You know, you don't want somebody who's scared to have an opinion. You don't want somebody who's just going to kind of clam up when it comes time to make that content. So I don't know exactly why it didn't end up working out. Probably would have been a bad idea on AD's part too, but
yeah, I was on a space with Joe. And let me know if I need to wrap up. I'll wrap up.
No, we got plenty of time. Wait till Whack runs in here with the Windex. That's when we're going to be done.
That would be my goal in life, to have Whack 100 interrupt me. But so I was on a space. I was on a space with Joe, and I asked, as someone who went through a breakup, he would have been uniquely positioned to kind of do the science and not maybe fall into the narrative of the alt-right pivot that was being positioned. And I thought, like, if he had talked about kind of exactly what you guys did, the same thing, where it's like you were trying to correct co-hosts on air about what they should be doing differently. But instead, AD goes on his show, calls in, says that there's some type of link between you interviewing Richard Spence and you telling him you're kind of redundant, you're saying the same jokes, and that's why he's gone.
Danny, let me tell you something. In the history of disingenuous arguments, in the history of nonsensical word salad arguments on podcasts, AD acting like he was offended by me interviewing Richard Spencer has got to be up there, because he set up a Nick Fuentes interview a couple months before that. And the only reason why it took place on this platform was because if it didn't take place on this platform, it was going to take place on his platform. And I just wanted to be there, well, firstly, he offered it because he kind of like realized that it might look weird if he did it on his platform and didn't bring it to No Jumper first.
The Fuentes interview.
The Fuentes thing. But I wanted to be there to make sure that things didn't go off the rails because from my perspective, he wasn't really equipped to do like a political conversation with somebody like Nick Fuentes, who basically, you know, does this for a living. He's like very, very good at sneaking his agenda into the mainstream conversation. So the idea that there was anything to be mad about with the Richard Spencer thing, it's kind of a stretch. He didn't say anything racist on the podcast. He actually was kind of putting forth his whole repentance story about how he regretted some of the more racist stuff that he did throughout his career, which I thought was very interesting. And, you know, I think in large part that podcast was really, really appreciated by the fans. But, you know, a few people on the hip hop side try to really like misrepresent how that conversation went.
I think the issue with Spence was I've watched a lot of documentaries, Frontline PBS documentaries about Spence, but it always felt like he never feels genuine. And I think even when he's talking about his repent, it still feels fake. So I think that's always going to be at the core of anything he does.
I do think that to him, it's not so much that racism is wrong. It's that racism is politically not advantageous. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like you're not gonna win elections by insulting different races and talking about race science and whatnot. It's just not really going to get you, or if you even just want to be a prominent conservative commentator.
Yeah.
Probably not going to happen. It's not going to help. It's not a good look.
Definitely. Did your platform get influenced by other people like doing that? Like Patrick Bet-David, I feel is somebody who's having people from different sides debate each other.
Yeah. That came from me doing, like, just spending a lot of time watching Destiny have conversations with people that he was on the opposite side of the aisle from. And that made me feel like, well, fuck, why don't I do more shit like this? Like, you know, I want to have a conversation with Richard Spencer. So, but I also know that like me having the conversation one-on-one, I'm very, very much outmatched when it comes to politics or whatnot. So I thought like, oh, if I get Destiny on it, what could be better than that? But then obviously people want to go with, well, he's not black. So he's not an appropriate person to have this conversation on your platform or whatever, which to me, I'm not really thinking about race as much as like ideology. Like, you know, I feel like when it comes to representing liberalism and progressivism, that Destiny's probably sufficient to have those conversations. But he's not terribly invested in the struggle of black people in America. So I don't think it's the worst argument ever. But
yeah, I just got a couple questions left. Do you think they regret it?
The dudes who left?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you have? Because I feel like the town is small. So you might actually just know that they regret it.
Oh, I know things.
That's what I'm saying.
Some of these guys are leaky fucking faucets, and they'd be having conversations with people that get back to me very, very quickly. So I wouldn't really want to show my hand by acknowledging some of the hard times that I know that certain people have been going through. But yeah, for sure, if there wasn't so much ego about it. And that's one thing I do kind of regret is I wish that maybe if I had just been pure, classy, grace-filled man throughout all of that shit, that it would have been easier for us to just kind of be like, oh, okay, boom, we can just do content together. That would have been kind of cool. But I mean, obviously they started it by just pushing narratives and whatnot. But
would you say you're invested in their downfall?
Only on a fan level, you know, only on like observing it. I'm not like invested in it in the sense of like making content about it. Obviously people text me about them and I'm willing to have conversations about it. But that's the weird thing is like, this is the most I've opened up in a long time about it because the more I talk about them,
the more energy.
All their best content is about me. So as soon as I open my mouth about them, it just opens the floodgates for them to have shit to talk about. So I try to just stay mum on it because ultimately I feel like where we're going is a lot bigger than where we've been.
I think why I ask about that is because like with Joe, Rory, and Maul, it seems like Joe doesn't want to bring them up, but he may always want to bring them up because I feel that at his core, he feels as if they try to railroad his business. And I think that's something men with egos, which I think you and Joe have, I think all men have. Like if somebody tried to come from my channel, which is not the same as your platforms, I would hate them to no avail. Like I would be like, I hate your guts. I will never let this go. So that's why I asked if you understand. Yeah.
But I don't hate AD because I feel like AD got suckered into like basically believing a bunch of bullshit that was being pushed on him by various people. And I feel like he knows that now. So I can't say I hate AD. I think AD's a good guy
He looks like a good dude. He looks like a great guy. Yeah. I don't know.
You think he's hot? You just like
a different type of podcast.
Just like the look of him.
No, he just looked like
he's tall.
Like he relates to the nerds, man. Everybody relates to the nerds and does like video game streaming. I don't have any problems with Figmunity. They probably like, who the hell is this guy with the red beanie? So Figmunity is all good. It's not like that. I think these podcast breakups, how things end, are fascinating.
Oh yeah.
And it's like I made this before we wrap up. I made this about like the Jay-Z and Dame Dash breakup, right? We still talking about it, but imagine they had done like thousands of hours of podcasts for us to look back at it. We talk about it more. There'd be channels about like Danny from the Stop talking about Jay-Z.
We never even got to hear them have an argument. Yeah. The best thing that we got was Dame Dash talking shit about him and on various podcasts many years later. And Jay-Z, he's lucky. He gets to move in such a way that he don't got to comment on shit.